finally, a bit of brighter news, this time from the deep sea. Off the coast of Antarctica, deep underwater, researchers have discovered the British ship called Endurance, the vessel that launched one of the most remarkable stories of survival and determination.
This was Endurance back in January of 1915, a sturdy, three-masted ship that had carried British explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton and his crew of 27 to the coast of Antarctica. Shackleton's plan was to land and then cross the entire continent, which would have been a first. But the Endurance got stuck off the coast, trapped by the massive halo of sea ice that grows around Antarctica every year. The ice seized the ship, and despite the crew's best efforts, never let her go.
In November 1915, as the Antarctic ice finally closed its grip around the wooden hull of the Endurance, Ernest Shackleton and his crew stood on the frozen floe and watched their ship sink beneath the surface. The dream of crossing the Antarctic continent had ended, replaced by a desperate struggle for survival that would go on to become one of the most legendary tales in exploration.
Welcome back. It's a maritime discovery more than a century in the making. Check this out,
Incredible.
folks. Isn't it? That is the hull of the HMS Endurance, the sunken ship of legendary polar explorer Ernest Shackleton, discovered all the way down in the icy depths of the Antarctic Ocean. It's astonishing.
Shackleton's men endured months of bitter cold, hunger, and uncertainty, eventually escaping in lifeboats across treacherous seas until every man was rescued. But the ship itself, crushed by the pressure of the ice and lost to the depths of the Weddell Sea, remained out of reach for more than a century. For generations, explorers, historians, and adventurers alike speculated about its fate. Then in March 2022, exactly 107 years after it slipped beneath the floes, scientists finally found the wreck, eerily preserved more than 3,000 meters below the surface. The story of the Endurance is one of those rare moments in history where heroism, failure, and mystery intertwine. Shackleton's Imperial Transantarctic Expedition of 1914 had set out to achieve the first crossing of the Antarctic continent, a journey of nearly 2,000 miles across some of the harshest terrain on Earth. His ship, built in Norway and originally named Polaris, had been designed to withstand polar conditions, its oak timbers and thick planking intended to resist the crushing force of the ice. Shackleton renamed her Endurance after his family motto, Fortitudinis. By endurance we conquer. It was a name that would prove almost prophetic. The ship never reached its intended landing point. By January 1915, just weeks after leaving South Georgia, Endurance became trapped in the pack ice of the Weddell Sea. For months, she drifted helplessly, imprisoned by the ice and slowly crushed by its relentless pressure. Shackleton and his men tried everything, cutting channels, setting sail when leads of open water appeared, even using coal and manpower to ram through softer flows. But nothing freed her. By October, the ice had begun to splinter her timbers. On October 27th, Shackleton finally gave the order to abandon ship. Over the following weeks, the crew salvaged supplies and boats as the Endurance groaned and buckled. On November 21st, the final blow came. With a thunderous crack, the ice crushed the hull and the ship slipped beneath the surface, disappearing forever into the black waters below. What followed was an epic of survival. Shackleton and his 27 men set up camps on the ice, drifting north with the floes as the Antarctic summer wore on. When the floes finally broke apart, they launched their lifeboats and made a harrowing voyage to the desolate Elephant Island. From there, Shackleton and 5 companions undertook perhaps the greatest small boat journey in history, sailing the James Caird 800 miles through storm-tossed seas to South Georgia to seek rescue. Months later, against impossible odds, Shackleton returned with a ship to save every man still waiting on Elephant Island. The expedition had failed in its original goal, but the survival of every crew member cemented Shackleton's reputation as one of the greatest leaders in polar history. For decades, the wreck of the Endurance was considered the holy grail of maritime archaeology. Finding it seemed almost impossible. The Weddell Sea is one of the harshest environments on Earth, choked with shifting ice floes and plagued by storms. Previous attempts in 2001, 2003, and 2019 all ended in failure, some losing equipment to the ice. But in 2022, the Falklands Maritime Heritage Trust launched Endurance 22, an ambitious expedition using the South African icebreaker Agulhas II. Equipped with advanced submersibles and sonar, the team braved shifting flows, temperatures plunging to 18 degrees Celsius, and constant blizzards to scan the seafloor. On March 5th, 2022, remarkably the 100th anniversary of Shackleton's funeral, they found her. The wreck lay at a depth of 3,008 meters, upright and astonishingly intact. Photographs taken by the remotely operated submersibles show the ship preserved in icy clarity. Her name, Endurance, still arched across the stern, the 5-pointed star Polaris glinting just beneath it. The masts are down, the rigging tangled, and the bow bears scars from the final descent, but the hull itself is largely coherent. Even small details remain visible. Boots, crockery, a porthole from Shackleton's cabin. The Antarctic waters had protected the wreck. Unlike warmer oceans, the Weddell Sea has no wood-eating worms, meaning the timbers have not been consumed. Instead, the Endurance has become a ghostly reef, home to sponges, sea squirts, brittle stars, and anemones that now cling to her surfaces. Menson Bound, the veteran marine archaeologist on the expedition, called it the finest wooden shipwreck I have ever seen. The wreck, protected under the Antarctic Treaty, will not be disturbed. No artifacts have been recovered, only detailed scans and photographs. But the imagery itself is breathtaking, showing a time capsule preserved against all odds. You would have to be made of stone not to feel a bit squishy at the sight of that star and the name above, Bound said. At that moment, you really do feel the breath of the great man upon the back of your neck. The discovery was more than just a triumph of maritime archaeology. It solved one of the great mysteries of polar history, where exactly the Endurance had gone down. Frank Worsley, Shackleton's captain, had recorded the ship's final position in his log, but the chaotic ice and poor visibility made it approximate at best. Later analysis of Worsley's notes, using modern lunar data to refine the navigational readings, suggested a location. Endurance 22 used these calculations, combined with favorable ice conditions in 2022, ironically the lowest sea ice extent ever recorded in the satellite era, to pinpoint the wreck. The ship was found just a few miles from Worsley's original position, a testament to his remarkable skill under impossible conditions. For scientists and historians, the preservation of the Endurance offers not only a glimpse into Shackleton's world, but also a deeper understanding of early 20th century shipbuilding. The vessel's Norwegian builders, led by Christian Jacobsen, had constructed her with extraordinary strength, thick oak timbers, reinforced joints, and a specially designed bow. But unlike Fridtjof Nansen's Fram, which was built to rise above encroaching ice, Endurance was designed to push through thinner pack. Once trapped in the full force of the Weddell Sea, her strength was not enough. The ice was relentless, and yet the name Shackleton chose for his ship proved prophetic. By Endurance, they did conquer, not in crossing the Antarctic, but in surviving its worst. Today, the ship rests undisturbed, a monument beneath the ice. Students around the world followed the Endurance 22 expedition, watching live streams and updates as history unfolded in real time. At exhibitions, 3D scans and printed models now bring the wreck to life for audiences far from the frozen south. More than a century later, the Endurance continues to inspire. Her story reminds us of human resilience, the fragility of ambition against nature, and the power of leadership under crisis. The ship may have sunk, but Shackleton's example did not. The wreck's rediscovery is not just an archaeological triumph, it is a bridge to the past, a chance to stand again with those men on the ice, to hear the timbers groan, and to feel the cold breath of the Antarctic as their ship slipped away.